March 3rd, 2000. One reckless call turns a quiet Miami afternoon into chaos and kills both men inside the helicopter. 10 miles of visibility, a light breeze, nothing in the sky warned anyone what was coming. Not weather, not mechanical failure. A choice made by a man famous for pushing a helicopter past its limits with a colleague behind him who'd already told him his flying scared him. Ruben Rivero, a veteran pilot, 6,500 hours logged. Behind the camera, Rob Pierce, an award-winning photojournalist who'd flown with him for years. That afternoon should have ended like every other. Sky 6, the local NBC news chopper, heading home after just another job. On the way back, Rivero spots a friend flying nearby, radios him over. The two helicopters slide into formation above the rooftops, old friends trading easy words. Then Rivero says something that makes the other pilot's stomach drop. Watch this. What happens next we're coming back to. First, you need to know who Ruben Rivero really was and why the man riding behind him had already raised concerns about his flying long before that day. This is one of the most avoidable cases we've ever covered. What happened next wasn't bad luck, it was a decision, and somebody else paid for it with his life. Back at Kendall Tamiami Executive Airport, you didn't need an accident report to know Rivero flew differently. 42 years old, thousands of hours logged, years behind the controls of Sky 6. But experience wasn't what other pilots noticed first. It was the arrival. Most crews eased into a scene. Rivero came in hot, nose up, near vertical climb just to stop the aircraft, then hovering lower than the helicopters already circling above him. If you like watching experienced pilots talk themselves into fatal decisions, hit subscribe. Rob Pierce saw it more than anyone. Sky 6's regular photographer, riding behind Rivero on nearly every run, camera braced, watching the horizon tilt on every liftoff. After the 7th or 8th steep bank in a row, Pierce finally said something. There was no need for it, he told him. Rivero kept doing it anyway. That February, he described a different maneuver to a friend, a high-speed pass down the runway, a hard pull into the sky, a full heading reversal at the top before diving back out. The recovery alone, he admitted, put brutal stress on the controls. He talked about it like a brag. Nobody grounded him. Nobody pulled him off the schedule. Pierce just kept showing up, camera in hand, the way he always had, right up until March 3rd. By March 3rd, Rob Pierce had spent years behind Sky 6's camera, long enough that flying with Rivero didn't feel out of the ordinary anymore. 34 years old, he'd built a career on something that looks simple on TV and isn't, holding a shot steady from a moving helicopter while the ground tilts beneath him. Years of chasing breaking news across South Florida, awards for it, trusted enough that the station cleared him to fly in Sky 6 whenever news broke. No small approval, earned run after run, beside Rivero. Nobody at WTVJ noticed a piece of paperwork that had quietly gone missing. Pierce had never completed the formal safety briefing required before flying in Sky 6, never signed the consent form the operations manual called for. It hadn't mattered before. Nobody had needed it to. That afternoon, the call that sent them up wasn't routine. A bus had collided with a train, the kind of story that leads a newscast. Sky 6 launched to cover it. No room for Rivero's usual theatrics on the way out. Just the job. Get there, get the shot, get back. By mid-afternoon, the footage was in. The story was done. All that was left was the flight home to Tamiami. And somewhere over the rooftops on the way, Rivero would spot a friend flying nearby and reach for the radio. 3:30. The flight home should have been the easiest part of the day. The bus and train story was filed. Sky 6 cruising back toward Tamiami, skimming low over the rooftops like it always did. Somewhere along that route, Rivero spots a familiar shape in the sky, a helicopter flown by a friend, a passenger riding along for what looks like an unremarkable afternoon. Radar would later show most of that return leg hugging low altitude, 100 to 400 feet, skimming the edge of Miami's controlled airspace. By the time Rivero spots his friend, he's climbed to meet him. The two aircraft slide into easy formation, drifting east together around 600 to 800 feet, close enough to talk over an open channel instead of catching up later by phone. For a minute or two, that's all it is. Two friends flying side by side, trading small talk above a quiet Miami suburb, the kind of moment that would have meant nothing to anyone glancing up from their backyard. A couple of people did glance up. They'd later described the two helicopters drifting close together, almost playfully, kids showing off for each other, never once thinking they were watching the last ordinary minutes of anyone's life. Then Rivero keeps climbing. His friend, still holding formation beside him, has no way of knowing he's about to become the only other pilot in the sky who'll hear what comes next. Roughly 1,000 feet, two helicopters, still holding loose formation. Rivero keys the radio. Watch this. Two words. His friend hears them clearly. So does a Sky 10 pilot monitoring the same frequency, miles away. So does the flight coordinator back at Miami. No idea yet he's about to become part of the record. Nobody has time to ask what he means. Sky 6's nose drops first, sudden, like it's simply falling out of formation. Then it reverses, the nose comes up, and keeps coming up. His friend watches the angle climb past level, past 45 degrees, past anything resembling a normal departure, steeper even than the arrivals Rivero made a habit at airports across Miami. Except this isn't a slow climb off a landing pad with other pilots watching from the ground. This is a few hundred feet above someone's roofline, at speed, with Rob Pierce strapped in behind him. Witnesses below would later put the angle somewhere between 70 degrees and straight up, the nose yawing hard left before it starts coming back down. Rumors at the airport went further in the days after, claiming Sky 6 rolled or went fully inverted. That account didn't come from anyone who actually saw it happen. This isn't Rivero's usual show. His friend has watched him pull off plenty of theatrics before. This is sharper, faster, already past the point where a pilot could ease back and laugh it off. Something is about to go very wrong, and there's nothing anyone in the air or on the ground can do to stop it. Every pilot on that ramp had a Rivero story. An attorney taking flight lessons at Miami once watched him settle into a 60-degree bank, barely 200 feet over the runway, dropping fast enough that his own instructor recognized the pilot before anyone said a name out loud. A hard bank was just Rivero being Rivero. This wasn't that. Past vertical, Sky 6 should have started coming back down toward level. It didn't. The nose kept swinging, left, then further left, the tail sweeping out beneath it, like the whole aircraft was trying to slide backward through the sky it had just climbed into. Rivero keyed his radio. No answer came back. On the ground, the couple who'd watched two helicopters drift together like old friends showing off weren't smiling anymore. Something about the shape in the air had stopped looking like a stunt. Rob Pierce had spent his whole career pointing a camera at other people's worst moments from a safe distance overhead. For the first time, there was no distance left to work with. Rivero had close to 6,500 flight hours, enough to know, better than almost anyone in South Florida, what it felt like when a helicopter stopped doing what it was told. Whatever he tried next, Sky 6 wasn't answering. A few miles off, the Sky 10 pilot who'd caught "Watch This" over the radio a minute earlier waited for whatever usually came next, a laugh, a correction,
Rivero keying back up to say something cocky. None of it came, just open air where a voice should have been.
At Tamiami, the flight coordinator had no reason yet to think anything was wrong. Sky 6 wasn't due to check in for several more minutes, nothing to flag, no protocol to reach for, just a routine afternoon that hadn't announced itself as anything else. His friend had the clearest view of anyone and the least ability to do a thing about it. He held his helicopter where it was, watching an aircraft that was supposed to be beside him swing through an attitude no formation flight should ever put a helicopter into. Calling out again felt useless. Closing the distance felt worse. Below, more backyards emptied out, a dog barking at the noise, a man stepping off his porch, shading his eyes. None of them had a word yet for what they were seeing, only the sense, sharp and sudden, that something overhead had gone from graceful to wrong in the space of a breath. Sky 6 dropped below the roofline of a two-story house, out of his friend's sightline, out of the ground witness's sightline, out of everyone's sightline at almost the same instant. For a few seconds, nobody could see it at all. One detail about Ruben Rivero had nothing to do with how he flew that afternoon, and everything to do with why he was ever allowed to do it. 12 years earlier, he'd been convicted for using an aircraft to bring in 220 pounds of marijuana. The FAA pulled his certificates in 1992. He fought his way back into a cockpit, but not without conditions. His reinstated certificate barred him from carrying paying passengers at night or on cross-country flights longer than 50 nautical miles. It didn't touch his helicopter rating, the one he was flying that afternoon, but it was still a documented mark on his record, a sign the FAA had already decided his judgment needed watching. By March 2000, nobody at WTVJ seemed to be watching it. 6,500 hours logged, a reputation good enough to erase whatever lingered from 1988 in most people's minds. A restricted certificate isn't a warning label anyone reads out loud in a newsroom. Back over the rooftops, the seconds kept stretching. His friend held his position, straining for any sign of Sky 6 past the house that had swallowed it from view. The man who'd stepped off his porch had gone still, head tilted, listening for something he couldn't yet name. Then it came. Not a sound anyone in that subdivision would have recognized right away, but one that reached backyards blocks apart at almost the same instant. The kind that makes people stop mid-sentence and go looking for their kids first, questions second. Nobody who heard it yet knew what they were listening to. They were about to. Past vertical, past control, Sky 6's own main rotor blades came down across its tail, the one part of the aircraft with no way to defend itself from the other. The tail boom sheared away mid-air. What had been single helicopter became two falling objects. Neither one was flying anymore. The main body spun as it dropped, rotor still turning, carving through the last few hundred feet in seconds. It came down inside a quiet residential complex called Oak Ridge, striking a planted island in the middle of a circular driveway, the kind of manicured little garden every house on that street had one of. The severed tail landed on its own, a short distance away, coming to rest on a back porch beside a swimming pool. One main rotor blade broke off entirely, the outer 4 feet of it landing 2 houses north of the main wreckage. Black smoke went up first, then fire, fed by fuel, spilled across the wreckage. His friend radioed it in immediately. So did Sky 10, already close enough to see the smoke rising from streets it had flown over 100 times. Police and fire crews reached the cul-de-sac within minutes. Ruben Rivero and Rob Pierce were both killed. Whatever Rivero meant by "watch this," nobody watching that afternoon would ever forget it. Investigators looked at everything a crash like this usually comes down to: weather, mechanical failure, a system that gave out without warning. None of it held up. Light winds, clear skies, engine and flight controls showed no defect consistent with failure in the air. Whatever damage they carried matched the impact, not the cause of it. The MD-600N's own flight manual carried one line that mattered more than any of it. Aerobatic flight was not approved in that aircraft, full stop. The NTSB's conclusion was simple and damning at once. A deliberate, showy maneuver flown in a helicopter never built for it. A toxicology screen later turned up a trace of an inactive cocaine byproduct in Rivero's system. Investigators couldn't determine whether it played any role that day. It changed nothing about the finding already made. It wasn't the first time drugs had shadowed his career. In 1988, Rivero was convicted on federal charges of conspiracy to import and distribute more than 100 kilograms of marijuana using an aircraft. Every certificate he held was revoked. He didn't get them back until 1999, less than a year before the crash. None of it was really a surprise once you stack it up. The steep banks Pierce had quietly objected to, the hammerhead pull he'd bragged about weeks earlier, the 60-degree bank an attorney happened to witness from the ground. Separately, they were stories people told about Rivero. Together, they were the whole answer, months before anyone needed one. One of the pilots who'd heard "watch this" that afternoon put it plainly afterward. Coming from a helicopter pilot, those two words were never good news. For Rivero, they turned out to be his last.